when you talk about Val and you try to introduce Val, there are so many things that you can say. But the first off is how amazing her husband EJ is, and how excited we are that he got to come with her. that look is priceless. But anytime that you hear Val speak, so anybody that doesn't know Val has spent numerous years at Villanova, TCU. Basically is a Houston native, or was a Houston native. When you hear her speak, when you hear her talk, you know how much she loves the profession of athletic training, sports medicine, and making athletes better and taking care of athletes. But realistically, the side of athletic trainers and making athletic trainers better. Because of that, she is our Madam President for District 6 for SWATA. Those of you that do not know. So, Val, we are excited to hear from you.
I love introductions. They're my absolute favorite. Thank you, Sean. Good morning, y'all, and thank you so much. We're going to mix it up a little bit here. We've heard from two amazing physicians this morning, and obviously a full slate of awesome speakers yesterday talking about skills that we can implement in our clinic, that we can implement in our athletic training room. So now I'm going to flip the script, and we're going to talk about actually how we plan to start to implement things. So this is one of those things that I don't think we talk about enough, which is kind of the business of athletic training. And Sean and I have usually lengthy conversations, because we can both be a little long-winded, about this side of athletic training and how little we actually talk about it and how little we get trained in how to do the business of athletic training. So, this quote, from Benjamin Franklin was, by failing to plan, you are preparing to fail. And I think we can all, I worked at Villanova, so I lived in Philly for a while and learned a lot more about Ben Franklin than I ever thought I would learn. He had a lot going on in his life. And I would assume that one of the reasons he was so successful is because he actually took the time to plan to be successful. Right? And so I would love for you to kind of use that lens as we're going through all of this. Okay, so why should you listen to me? Why do I matter? As Sean mentioned, I worked at Villanova University, so I'm a Texas girl. Grew up in Houston. I was an athletic training student aide at Langham Creek. Go Lobos, under Tom Woods, who is a special man. I went up to Texas Tech, and I got to work with that Buzz guy, Reckham. I then went to Pennsylvania to a small D2 school called Bloomsburg University, where we had about $0 to operate off of. So going from Texas Tech to a D2, I learned a lot about how to kind of utilize different things and get creative and MacGyver different methods within athletic training. And then I get to Villanova, and it's this really expensive wannabe Ivy League school with really great basketball, and they paid me nothing. It was great. So they offered me a free master's degree. So I was like, well, I might as well get something out of this. So I went ahead and got a master's in public administration. It's the MPA, not the MBA. And what was really valuable about that is I learned a lot about how non-for-profits work, right? How do you get to the administrator to have a conversation about budget? How do you get promotion when there's not always pay behind it? And so I think that was a really insightful opportunity for me being there. But then I came back to the great state of Texas, and I worked at TCU and was there for 12 years. And I teach organization and administration in the athletic training program. So that's where I kind of keep my feet in the grass, if you will, with the students, and where I've kind of honed in on some of this administrative talk. So I left the traditional setting of athletic training. I was one of those, but I actually had a crystal ball, and I left in October of 2019, right before COVID started, so that I didn't have to deal with that. So it was the first time in my career that I actually had a little bit of insight. And so now I'm the clinical product manager at a company called Kelvy. What's really great about this is now I'm in business, right? So now I'm in boardrooms. I'm meeting with investors. I'm understanding a lot more about the business side of things, and I'm working in research. I'm at conferences as a vendor, understanding that side of the business. And I'm working with really amazing athletes and kind of understanding their needs. So I feel like I've given you all my disclosures now at this point. But what I'd really like to get out of today is to arm you with some strategies to use. What can you take back to your athletic training room and put together so that you can be better prepared to present your plans? How can you better implement all of the amazing information that you've gotten from this week? How can you take that back and put it into play strategically? Okay, so why should you care about what I'm about to say? Okay, we all know about other people and organizations having a plan. I'll actually show you the NATA just put out a new strategic plan for the NATA. But also, we know that one decision can truly have a domino effect of how other decisions come out, right? One thing that you do can have an effect that changes things for 5, 10, 15 years. One decision that you make tomorrow to implement on Monday could change the course of your entire semester, right? So again, if we plan for emergencies and we plan for illnesses, for PPEs and purchases, why are we not planning for our program, our professional growth, our staff engagement, or those other areas of our work? I think a lot of times we get stuck in a cycle. How many of you are in the secondary school setting or in the traditional setting? Okay, how many of you work like clinic outreach? How many of you are in a non-traditional setting? Okay, so you are probably operating off of a school year or off of a fiscal year, right? Your Q1 probably has some standard Q1 things. Your Q4 has some standard I've learned about Qs since I've been in business. Okay, they're quarters. It's not that fancy. And if you're in a school year, right, you know what's going to happen in August, so you plan for August, and then you look forward to break, and then you plan for January, and then you plan for spring break, right? But why are we not planning for the other things? Why are we not taking a step back and kind of that 35,000-foot view to understand how we can be better at all the things that we're doing and not just going through the motions? So having a strategic plan offers you opportunity. Right? You're looking for an opportunity for growth, an opportunity for improvement, an opportunity to be more efficient, to be more effective. And who doesn't really want that, especially in today's world? I am going to go here just because I feel like I need to. The advocate hat has to come in, which, by the way, an ESPN alert just came across 30 minutes ago that said Damar Hamlin's breathing tube has been removed. And he was speaking with his caregivers, he was speaking with his family, and they're saying he is neurologically intact. If that's not a praise break, I don't know what is. I don't know about y'all, but, and if you don't know the athletic trainers that were there, they are amazing people. I've had the opportunity to interact with both staffs and Sean and I were actually just joking about it. Was our profession not just put in the best spotlight possible? In such a tragic, scary situation, athletic trainers rose up, did the right thing, and literally saved this man's life. So if this is not a piece for me to just hop on my soapbox right now, if you have not looked at your EAP since walking back into your school, if you have not looked at your EAP since walking back into your workspace, please go do that. If you do not have one, let's talk. There are free resources that'll give you one. Also, as I talk about strategic plan, if ever there was a time to go talk to your administrators about anything that you want, now is the time. If there was ever a moment where you could go engage with your stakeholders to say, hi, do you realize what we're doing here? I know you see me taping ankles. I know you see me handing out Gatorade. I know you see me standing on the line at Toyota. But this is really why we're here. And the reason you haven't thought about it is because I haven't had to do it. I was once working PRN, and a coach came up to me and was like, oh, pretty lazy day for you. And I said, well, which athlete did you want to get hurt for me to have to work? He walked away pretty quick. Right? I think I put on my sassy pants that day. But please, 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 I'll get off my soapbox and we'll get back to regularly scheduled programming. But please, please, please use this right? I think Damar Hamlin would want us to use this as a positive step for change. I think he would want us to utilize this as an advocacy moment to say how important we are and how important the work that we're doing is. So, all right, so I feel like I have to show this because in today's world you have to show that everything is evidence-based, but I promise you it is, okay? There is actually evidence behind the use of strategic planning to make workplace better. There's nothing you need to read about these articles. This is not something you need to screenshot. Trust me. But what they are saying is that organizations are more efficient and effective when they take the time to plan. It makes sense, right? Instead of just spinning your wheels and doing things just to do them or to check a box because it's August and we know we need to do it, taking the time to step back and making a plan makes you more efficient at what you need to do. It's kind of like me at the grocery store. If I have a list, I'm pretty efficient when I go to the grocery store. If not, I get distracted by the things on the end cap. And I come home with things that I really didn't need, right? I was inefficient with my time, my energy, and my resources because I didn't make a plan. And that usually means I'm eating more candy too. Okay, so what is a strategic plan? Because most of us are probably pretty intimidated. Let's actually start with this question. How many of you have ever been invited to work on a strategic plan with your administration? Okay, and it was probably some really big cumbersome event, right? Was there like a retreat? Oh, well, that's good. I see you shaking your head no, because most of the time, like, these companies make this strategic plan thing, like these retreats, and it's some big event, and you have to, like, you know, bring in some consultant, and they do all this work. But really, it can be taking time, right? It can be just taking a 30 minutes in the morning to kind of, you know, take an overview of the schedule for the year and you know, look at different opportunities for growth. It can be taking a look at maybe some of your knowledge gaps that you've seen and things that you want to learn about and finding continuing education, right? That's being strategic with your planning. So, true strategic planning and management is using an evidence-based of guidelines or steps. It's using an outline, right? So it increases understanding, it stimulates innovation, it coordinates your framework, it gives you new capabilities, it helps with decision making, and it gives you an approach to evaluation and program monitoring. How many of you made a New Year's resolution? Oh, wow. This is not a resolution kind of group, huh? Right? Well, across the world, how many people are making New Year's resolutions, being like, this year I'm gonna fill in the blank, right? Probably a lot of people are doing something with health or wellness or, you know, all the like coin terms. And so they're just kind of putting something out there, but they're not always providing themselves the framework to get it done, right? I'm gonna start working out. And then they wake up on January 3rd and say, no, I'm gonna start working out. And they wake up on February 3rd and no, I'm gonna start working out, right? Or the people that download the app, but they don't understand what the words mean. They join the gym, but they're scared to use the machine, right? They buy all the diet food and realize none of it tastes good. Okay? Right? Those are things that we just do without a strategic plan to them. So what I'm encouraging you to do is utilize framework that'll help you with that and not reinvent the wheel. Okay, so this is the NATA strategic plan. If you are an NATA member, you should have gotten this in your email. But the NATA actually has taken the last 2 years to put together a strategic plan. I am not asking you to take 2 years of your life to put together a strategic plan. But this is their plan for how they want to enhance the profession in the next 2 years. I've included a link, and again, more than happy to send this out, but nata.org /strategic plan. And really what they're talking about is a plan moving forward, right? They're talking about the future and what are the strategic pieces to get there. Okay, so you can see even our own organization took the time to step back and say, we're moving, it's a new world out there for us, for our profession, for the people that we serve. Right? So how can we be strategic in moving forward? Okay, so strategic planning is not EAPs, it's not best practices, it's not micro-level thinking, it's not your day-to-day activities. It's an opportunity to look for opportunity. Okay? The growth mindset, have anyone ever read like the growth mindset books that are out there? Really cool. It doesn't, so 5-second overview. Basically, a growth mindset isn't saying, I don't do something. It's saying, I don't do it right now. Or I'm working on learning this right now. So it's not saying, oh, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to do that yet. Right? Because it gives you potential for growth. So when you're looking at strategic planning, it really does require a different mindset because you can't be defensive about what you're currently doing. You can't be defensive and be like, whoa, that means I have to change. We've all changed in the last couple years. Let's admit it, right? So how can we take an opportunity to look at our potential for growth? Because actually, that's going to make you a better professional. It's going to make you a better clinician, right? I think more people respect you when you look for the opportunity for growth and change than when you stay stagnant where you are. And I would say it's important, if not essential, in today's social and professional parameters. If you are not looking for how you can grow and change, you're going to be stuck. I show a video in my class from, y'all remember Lou Holtz, the old football coach with his sweet little accent? And he has this video, and he says the worst thing he ever did in his career was get to Notre Dame and win. And then he goes on to say, because we won and we didn't change. Because we won, we just relied on what got us to winning previously. And we didn't think we had to do anything different. And now he knows that there's only one of two options. You're either growing or you're dying. He said, so if you're not changing and moving and growing and you're staying stagnant, you're actually getting left behind. So if you think about that, if we're all starting off on a level playing field and you're staying the same and everyone else is growing, you're getting farther and farther behind. Now, that doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make you a bad professional, but think about the opportunities for growth. For those of you who are more experienced, who have been doing this a while, you have so much to offer the professionals of today, right? You've seen more things, you've done more things. Well, if you're not challenging yourself in your own growth, how are you going to match what some of these younger professionals are coming in knowing and doing, where you can have those symbiotic relationships, right? Where they can show you something while you can show them something. Where are you going to meet people in conversations if you don't have that growth mindset? Okay, so let's talk about how we can actually do this, right? So we're gonna have some reflection time this weekend. You're gonna get back in the office on Monday and say, so what? Okay, this little circle right here is probably the easiest framework you can use. Why do I exist? How do I do what I do? And what do I need to change, improve, and grow? Super simple, right? So your mission statement, if you're at a school, if you're at any nonprofit, you're gonna have a mission statement, right? I'll actually share my personal mission statement here in just a second, but it's why you exist. Why does your organization exist? Why did you become a professional? It's your why. Okay, that's that middle circle there. Your vision is who you want to be, right? What do you see in the future? You'll see this, it gets really fancy in marketing. They'll be like Vision 2023, right? And they have all these fun graphics, and it's usually this really big statement, and I'll show you some examples here. Your values are how you're going to get there, how you do what you do. You already have those, you just probably haven't written them down, right? If you have an athletic training student group, right, having a value set probably is more powerful than having a manual, because everything can be related back to what you value, right? If you do this action, is that enhancing what we value? Is that in alignment with what we value? Or are you going against that, right? And then strategic planning is what you're doing. So you are taking your why, you're taking who you want to be, you're taking how you do the things that you do, your culture, and you're combining those to think about the future. Okay, so here is Google's mission statement: to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. If you notice, it talks about nothing about a search bar, right? But if you use Google, you know everything that they do goes back to this idea, right? One of the reasons why they've made everything the way they have is to relate it back to their mission. Starbucks, this one's an interesting one. To inspire and nurture the human spirit, one person, one cup, and one neighborhood at a time. They say nothing about caffeinating us, right? But when you walk into each Starbucks, just like Dr. Macias was saying, you're now going to see it. You're going to see a bulletin board, and it's only going to have community events on there. So now go look in your Starbucks, and they'll have some local artist up there, some local camp, something that's happening in the community, because their mission is to support the community, that local neighborhood. They truly want to be your neighborhood Starbucks. So their mission statement is being reflected in that action of a bulletin board. And then my personal mission statement is to keep people moving. So when I left the traditional setting, I had a little bit of a identity crisis, right? Because I had been a college athletic trainer for so long, and there had always been a logo on me that told me who I was, right? And I didn't have that anymore. So I had to figure out why I existed. I had to figure out why I was still in this profession, if I wanted to stay a credentialed athletic trainer. And I realized that part of my personality and part of my reason for being is to keep people moving. Now, sometimes that's athletically. I still do PRN work. Sometimes that's mentally. I still teach. Sometimes that's emotionally by mentoring, right? And sometimes that's by being in business and doing some consulting with some companies to keep them moving forward in what they're doing, right? So that's my personal mission statement, so that everything I am planning to do relates back to that. So my really tough days, I remind myself of my why so that I can keep doing what I do, okay? There is, if you Google it, going back to our friends at Google, there is actually a couple of options for mission statement generators. So if you want a mission statement for your athletic training room, you can literally go in and type in a few keywords, and it will help you generate a mission statement. If you need help generating one, I will help you, right? Because they don't have to be fancy. Right? There's a whole algorithm for how you can put it together, what it means. We won't get into all of that. But I think having a why statement is a very grounding foundational piece to remind you of why you're doing what you do. So on that really tough day in February, when you have soccer, you have basketball, football needs this, track is going here, a coach is being annoying, and you have to go do something in a classroom, you remember why you're doing what you do. Or when there's a tough decision, we'll talk a little bit about decision making here in a minute. When there's a tough decision, you can use your why as your guidepost for how you're going to make a decision, right? Because it's going to come back to why we do what we do. Okay, so again, take home pieces. So this is actually what I teach in my class because I think it's the easiest thing to do. Also, this is what a lot of administrators are doing. This is what a lot of school boards are doing. So if you want to speak their speak, this is, I think, another great kind of moment to insert this thought for y'all. I think a lot of times as athletic trainers, we sheepishly walk into an AD's office or into our, our boss's office, and we kind of ask for something, right? Why do you think we get denied so many times? Anybody? Not a rhetorical question. Literally, why do you think we get denied so often? Sorry, what was that? It's not important to them. They know we're gonna figure it out anyway if they don't give us the resource. Money. They don't understand. God, were you reading my mind, Jose? Right. A lot of times I think part of our problem is we don't go in knowing their pain points. We don't go in understanding what an administrator's dealing with every day and understand the number of things that are going on for them. And we have our little bubble and our little world, and we present it as the most important thing, not taking into consideration anything else that's going on. So you know what? Maybe they tell us it's money, but what I've learned in the business world is usually the reason isn't the reason. Usually the first reason is an excuse because they don't want to tell you the real reason, right? So it was they don't understand what you're asking for, so we'll blame it on money because we don't know if we can spend what you're asking us to spend because we don't understand why it matters. right? So something as simple as a SWOT analysis will allow you to start speaking the language of an administration. So a SWOT analysis is a lovely acronym that stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. You can literally Google SWOT and it will give you 1 million free resources. But what you're gonna do is you're gonna look at strengths and weaknesses. Those are internal. So we're going to use the example here of your athletic training department, right? You can also do this personally, absolutely. So this is, I do this exercise every year in my class for our athletic training education program. It is fascinating now that I have 14 years of data. No two classes have ever had the same SWOT analysis. Why? Because they have different experiences. The culture in 2008, a little different than 2018, right? At TCU, everyone was real happy this year. Everything was good. There were no issues. Why? Because we were winning. 2017, not so much, right? So the SWOT analysis is different depending on when you're doing it. So you're gonna use your strengths and your weaknesses, and here's your chance to eat a big old piece of humble pie and be honest with yourself. What are we good at? What have we been really, really good at? And then where are some areas we're lacking? Be honest with yourself. Again, this is that growth mindset. This is that opportunity to understand that by doing this, you can get better. Okay, it's not a bad thing. It's actually really the first step kind of forward to improvement. And then this second section of opportunities and threats is gonna be external. Right? So opportunities are something like fundraising, district grants, right? Opportunities from stakeholders, your team physicians, right? Customers. Those are opportunities that are external to your department. Threats are things that can harm, right? Threats are things that could be potentially negative coming in from the external. Budget cuts, right? That C word that we've all experienced, right? That was a huge one in our athletic training program as we were transitioning to the master's program, is how do you get out and market when you can't get out and market, right? That was a threat. So when you do all of these, you then put these together into something called a TOWS table. And so this is turning opportunities over weaknesses into strengths. You don't need to know all that. But what you're really gonna do then is take these strengths, and you're gonna, remember the old like genetics matrix, remember our little box, right? So we're gonna take these and crisscross, and you're gonna take your strengths and figure out how you can use your strengths to enhance your opportunities, vice versa. So if you have a really amazing team physician, right? And one of your strengths is your social media presence, okay? How can you put those together? Can you combine with your physician's office to do something really cool? Can they give you a sponsorship for something, right? If there's a class that you want to take to enhance something, can someone help fund that? Then that next quadrant is going to be taking those strengths to help you overcome threats. So if a strength is your tenure, you've been somewhere for a really long time and people know you, how can you use that to overcome an external threat? Hey, you've trusted me in the past to handle this budget. I need you to trust me now. Okay? But again, it's not taking that daily decision. It's actually taking a strategic approach to it. Then same thing on the bottom. How can we use our opportunities to overcome our weaknesses? And then I'll call this the Debbie Downer corner. Okay, this is our weaknesses and our threats. So what can we do to ensure that we have a strategy and a plan to overcome this corner? Right? So if you are already down in staff and then COVID hit and you had budget concerns, what's your plan for that? So now that I'm traveling around the country for my work, I go into a lot of athletic training rooms, especially in that kind of mid-major and smaller college and university, and they are struggling. They're struggling because they never did a strategic plan to figure out how they were going to manage things before COVID hit. And then the bombshells, and then the cuts, and the cuts. And now they're just trying to play catch up. But they don't even have a document to show their value and their worth. So it's really difficult for them to kind of go have some of these conversations because they're still backpedaling from some things and documents that they could have had to help them win their case before it all happened. Okay? Any questions so far? Sorry, I know this gets to be a lot, and then we get to the end and you forget a question. Anything at this point? Okay. Okay, this one right here, I know people say this a lot, but like this one literally changed my life. Like, not trying to be over dramatic, but this thing right here. This book was one of those books that once you read it, you're like, oh, okay. So we actually had this gentleman, Josh Medcalf, come talk to our teams at TCU, and he wrote this book called Burn Your Goals. How many of you had to do SMART goals in your life? And you had to be specific, and they had to be measurable, and you're like, well, this is dumb, right? And how many of you met your SMART goal? Very rarely, right? How many of your teams have a triangle that's hung up in their locker room, and it talks about all the things that they're going to do, and at the top is like, win state, win the national championship, right? Because we all have these goals, and they're really pretty. And they sound good, and they sound motivational, but then they tend to drop off, right? And so what he talks about is instead of worrying about your goal, worry about your process. Worry about benchmarks. Worry about milestones. What do you need to reach to go on to the next thing? How are you going to get to that end vision off of your process and off of different milestones? So if you've ever ran a marathon, has anybody ran a marathon in here? If you had, yay for you. I've had 5 knee surgeries. I don't run unless something's chasing me. Okay? So I don't run a marathon, but I've worked them. No one says, I'm going to run to mile 26. No, they say, the first 3 miles, I'm doing this. Here's my pace. Then I'm going to stop and I'm going to have a snack. This is where I hydrate. This is where I do this, right? This middle set's the tough set. So here's what I'm going to do here, right? They're not just saying, my goal is to run. There's a plan and a preparation and benchmarking that comes along with this. So this is where you can use that mission and vision, and you create your end goal. What do you want to look like as an athletic training department? What are your milestones to get there? What do you need to have in place to say, we do this? If you want to do more manual therapy, if you want to be more involved in the post-operative rehab process, what do you need to have tool-wise? What do you need to have resource-wise to be able to do that? If you want to implement a new skill, something that you learned at this conference, how are you going to implement that? What tools do you need? What stakeholder buy-in do you need? Right? You're not just going to walk, back home and say, all right, we're going to start doing breathing. Which athletes are you going to choose to start implementing that with? Who's a team maybe that's always looking for something new to try, right? Who are you going to choose to implement? What resources do you need? Is there a budgetary piece of that? And then you start working backwards from there. I will also tell you, this completely changed the way I rehab. Completely. Just if you take nothing else home from this talk, I started using benchmarking as my way of going through especially long-term rehabs, because that way I didn't say, oh, well, our goal this week is, 90 degrees of knee flexion. And then when they didn't get it by Friday, they felt like a failure. And then they went home for the weekend and came back Monday still feeling like a failure. I said, in order to play basketball, what do we need to be able to do? We need to be able to run. We need to be able to jump. We need to be able to stop. We need to be able to shoot. We need to be able to cut. Okay, what are the things we have to do to get there? Well, what are the things we have to do to get there? All right, so that means in order for us to start with lateral motion, I need you to be able to control your glute. How are we going to work on your glute? Right? And so now we come back to these small pieces that they're able to do, knowing that they're going to get to the next milestone. And then once they get to that milestone, we can start moving forward, versus, well, if you don't get to 90, we don't get to do anything. Right? So I highly recommend this benchmarking. If you want to get into the weeds in that, more than happy to dive in the deep end with y'all on that. But really great, again, for strategic planning when you're just kind of thinking of some pieces that you want to add, but you're maybe not looking to overhaul your whole department. Okay, this is another great way, again, for those of you who are like, well, I'm in a high school, right? My year looks pretty similar every year. Okay, well then what can you add to your April schedule that maybe helps you do something for your student aids? What's something that you can add to your September schedule that's going to enhance what you're doing for football? What can you do in your preparation process for back to school time that's going to enhance your care, right? So maybe all of us are practicing our EAPs to January, because now we realize just doing them in August when we're focused on football isn't beneficial. And maybe we need to practice them now in January for the other sports and how we're handling different things. And now you can add that to kind of a timeline, but now there's a strategy to your months. It's not just rolling through the motions of what you've done every year. Okay? So this is another great option. Okay, how many of you have ever done a pro-con list? Like if you're ever looking for jobs and you're like, what's the pro-cons, or I'm going to compare these. I had a professor in grad school who, it was a Catholic school, so he couldn't really say all the things he wanted to say, but he crumpled up a pro-con list and threw it on the floor and then stomped on it. And for a priest, that was a pretty big deal, right? But one of the things that he told us about a pro-con list is you are typically trying to weigh things against each other when they're not even looking the same. Right? It's the whole, how much does a pound of brick versus a pound of feathers weigh? Well, they both weigh a pound, but they mean very different things to you. So why are you trying to weight them the same? Right? So what they actually said for us to do is to take pros and cons and add a weight, add a value to them. How much does this matter to you? How much does this matter to your organization? So have a scale that allows you to associate a weight, and now you're adding up an objective total versus subjective value. One of the things that I did when I was trying to decide if I was going to leave my job or not is, instead of weighting two jobs against each other, because how could I? How could I weigh the place that I had been for 12 years and the thing that I had done for 17 against this new thing that I had no clue what it meant? I couldn't. So what I did is I wrote a list of my job, my values out of 10. And then I weighted those two jobs against my standard. I could never compare them against each other, but I could compare them against what I wanted. Right? So if you have a baseline of what your department would look like out of 10, now you can weigh these different opportunities against your vision and your values of what matter to you, what matter to your department, what matter to you as a professional. So really, the idea here is we're objectifying subjective values. Okay, so we're gonna run through this. Decision making. How many of you have to make a decision every day? Okay, you decided to wake up, you decided what you were gonna wear, you decided which route you were gonna take, how many creamers you're gonna put in your coffee. They say that the average American is making 35,000 decisions a day. And we wonder why we're not sleeping at night. I do want to disagree with Dr. Macias about the bags under my eyes. I do not think it is overbreathing. I think I am that tired pigeon, right? But we are making so many decisions that we actually have decision fatigue. That's why when you get home at night and you're like, what do you want for dinner? I don't care. Why do you not care? Because you've made so many other decisions throughout the day that you are so tired of making decisions that it's tough. And now you have important decisions you need to make at work, but you have decision fatigue. So how can you use framework, again, for decision making that's going to make it a little less cumbersome, a little bit more efficient for you? So there's a very easy one, again, another acronym. It's OODA. It is observe, orient, decide, and act. Okay? I think a lot of times for decision makers, we're like, oh my gosh, what about this? And that's when the pro-con list comes out and we call 52 people and asking them for their advice. But we haven't done those first two. We haven't really taken the time to observe what's going on, orient and understand what kind of our North Star is, that mission, that vision, and that values, where we want to go, why are we doing it, how we do it, right? Orienting how that would affect us and where those lie on that scale. And then just making the decision and going, right? What are you going to do? And then making an action item happen immediately after the decision. One of the worst things that we do is wait to do. I am so guilty of this. I get done with a meeting and I'm like fired up, right? I'm going to get all this stuff done. And then a call comes in and I forget, and the Post-it note falls off my desk and I don't remember about it, and I didn't take the action item on it. Okay? So UDA is really see what's going on, define your North Star, make the decision, and go. And if you notice, the decision-making piece of that is only 25%. There's a lot more action around it than the actual decision itself. It's a military approach, if you couldn't tell. Okay? This one I think is kind of cool if you have kind of like a big decision to make, and if you're creative, is you can use a tree. It's called a logic tree. Basically, the trunk of the tree, and you can like draw this out however you want, whiteboard it, whatever, is kind of putting the decision or the problem, and then what are the different things that could happen. Sometimes our brain, there's a whole psychological piece to this, it gets so weighed down by what could happen, especially on the negative side, that we forget about what could happen on the positive side, or that it might just be neutral. You might just make a decision and move on, right? So this tree allows you to kind of get those thoughts out of your brain, like, well, if I do this, what might happen? Okay, what might happen? So put it all out there. And it's a very visual thing, and a lot of people use this in psychology when you're making like a big life decision. Okay, here is, if you are a logistics person and you like to check boxes, define the actual problem. Define the actual problem. Not the problems you've created around it, but the actual problem. Gather information, right? This is where you talk to people. It's where you find out, okay, what are the options? Develop them, evaluate them, and then choose and take an action. Right, so again, I think if you're a step-by-step person, if you want instructions, if you want kind of a guideline of how to do things, this is a really great way to just kind of give yourself that guidance of how to go through that process. Okay, how many of you have seen, this is our athletic training kind of value statement, really cool thing. They have the free posters if you want to hang them up in your athletic training room, but this can also be used as a little bit of a vision statement. So again, this is that piece of kind of looking towards the future and what could things mean for us. I love the Patagonia. How many of you own a little Patagonia vest? Again, I worked at TCU. We were about Patagonia'd out up there. But it was build the best product, cause no unnecessary harm, and use business to inspire and implement solutions to the environmental crisis. What did y'all hear about what the CEO of Patagonia did? He gave away the company. All of the money from the company, because this was his vision. So when he says, use business to inspire, I think he inspired a lot of people. And this vision statement was written years ago. And I think he finally got to the point where he saw what the company was doing and kind of the way of the world right now, and he knew he had to make a big move, and he did. Oxfam, their vision is a world without poverty. Now, are they going to check the box for that vision tomorrow? Probably not. Okay? But they're going to work every day to get there. They're going to make decisions based on this vision. Is this going to help us get there? IKEA. Our vision is to create a better everyday life, except when you're putting together their furniture. But their vision, one of the reasons they do what they do y'all know why they do the furniture the way they do? Is because they've engineered for efficiency and effectiveness with packaging and with shipping and with supply and human resource costs. So that's why everything's in a flat box, because it doesn't take up as much space. So they're trying to enhance everyday life based on that theory and based on that vision. Okay, so again, ways to do this, ways to implement this. Here's an action plan. For those of you that need a piece of paper to do things, you can literally Google strategic action plan. And this will help you get your thoughts out of your head and onto paper. Okay, and so this one is kind of looking, again, they use the word goals. You can use benchmark, you can use whatever language you want. You can say, here are the steps that I need to get there, right? Evaluation. This is the stuff that you start to take to your administrators. Right? Now it's not just, I need a new STEM machine. It's that I have a vision to care for athletes and keep them healthy, happy, and engaged in their activities. My action plans for that are having new up-to-date modalities that allow me to do that. Taking continuing education so I can grow in my professionalism. That sounds a little different than I need a new Chattanooga, right? But you can see how this framework is a different presentation of that plan to others. This is one that's taken, again, from the nonprofit land. It was really tough to kind of pull this image, so again, more than happy to share any of these. But this had the mission and the vision on the paper, because everything that they did came back to that mission and that vision statement. And then this was the continuation of that page. Again, just breaking all that big vision, that 35,000-foot view, and bringing it in for landing. What do those houses start to look like when you get closer to them coming down off the plane? Okay, this one, I used this because I wanted you to see this group. They're working towards justice and opportunity for the grant makers concerned with immigrants and refugees. This plan is unbelievable. I mean, visually, how pretty is that? But then inspirationally, when you look at their actual goals and what they want to do, then they have tools, and I love this. Who are my partners in this? Who are my stakeholders? Who are the people that I need invested with me to help me make this happen? Again, I think that's one of the things we don't do well as athletic trainers is we don't engage our stakeholders. We don't engage the people that really do support us. We don't ask them, we don't pull that card to ask for their help when it's time, right? And then what do they expect out of those outcomes? Again, when I was doing a strategic plan for my previous institution, when I say my expected outcomes are decreased injuries and increased playing time, people started to look and listen a little bit differently, right? When I say I want to implement something because of a mental health concern, and my outcome is that we will have a better mental health policy that allows us better access to our student athletes that are struggling, that sounds really different than I have a new policy that we need to implement. Okay, so that outcome piece is really important. Again, just another visual for different ways that you can kind of put things together. And again, for those of you who are visual, what that can start to look like. If you notice, it looks like an arrow and a house. Oh, by the way, fun fact. Did any of y'all know that in FedEx, between the E and the X is an arrow? Right? Again, one of those other things that once you see it, you can't unsee it. But their whole thing is part of their mission is to show things moving, right? With their shipping. So the idea of seeing that arrow is that you're constantly thinking of motion. I know, craziness. This one literally got off of Canva. Canvas are really cool. There's free pieces of Canva. If you don't use Canva in your work, I would highly recommend it. I think for educators, you can actually get a free Educators Pro account as well. Great graphic design, a lot of pre-made templates. This one's just a goal sheet. Right? So again, you don't have to reinvent anything. You have a ton of free resources that are out there of people who have already created these products for you that you can decide what works best for you, for your department, for you as a professional, and how you can start to implement this. Okay, where can you use this? You can use it for personal growth, professional growth, for your staff development, department development, long-range planning, things that are coming down the pipe that you know you need to plan for now. If you have new administrators that you need to educate them on what you do and why you do it and how you do it, this is a great way to come in and have talking points when you finally get that 10 minutes with them. Any change and any stagnation. So really the application of strategic planning is wherever you need it. But some of that's going to take a little reflection on your part. Ton of sources, resources. Again, I can get those to you. Okay, any question? Sean, did I do okay on time? Okay. Any questions? I know I'm not a doctor, and I didn't talk about sleep or facial lax, but again, this is stuff, and I think it's something we all get a little uncomfortable with because it's challenging us to be different. It's challenging us to change. It's challenging us to say that something that, you know, we are currently doing, it's not that it's wrong. It may not be serving us as well as it used to.